What is going on, everyone? We are back with another review, and this time we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 9 of Welcome to Paradox, All Our Sins Forgotten. Please remember to check the link in the description below. It'll send you over to the Patreon where you can get everything a full week early. So the title of this is All Our Sins Forgotten. This was directed by Bruce McDonald, written by David Ira Cleary and Miguel Tejada Flores. It was released October 12th, 1998. Cast includes Claudette Caracado as Rwanda, Bernie Colson as Frank Daskin, Brendan Fletcher as Rudy, Alice Poon, which is an unfortunate name, as Claire Brazil, Henry Rollins is Dr. Ovid Brazil. That's why I recognized him. It was Henry Rollins. Big time singer. Sarah Strange is Dr. Newman, and Michael Sunsick as William Steele. So to give you guys a rundown of what all happened, we start off with the doctor working with test patients, and you come to find out he is working on a technology that allows people to erase their memories. And the way it works is they have this pad, and they write down the memory down on something, I guess hit an erase button, and it cuts the synapse that connects the memory to the brain. In the process of this, no one out of the 100 test subjects had ever wanted to come back or to relearn what it was that they had forgotten. So he meets up with one of his it's Dr. Brazil ends up meeting up with who's the doctor? Dr. Newman, I believe. Dr. Brazil meets up with Dr. Newman, and Dr. Newman basically says, what happens if someone ever wants their memory back? And he's like, it's never happened in the 100 test patients that, at all. And at that point, somebody comes in and does want to remember something that they had done. So he does the only thing that he knows how to do. He sets it up for them to be able to remember what happens, but it causes their brain to overwork and it kills them. Or completely fries their brain. That's not ever truly explained. Right before all of this, Dr. Brazil's wife got murdered by somebody. He came home with flowers for her, and she was dead on the sunroof. So, there's that. So anyways, he continued doing his work. However, when he fried the guy's brain, or killed him, whichever one it was, he basically got fired by those medical people, and he went and opened up his own place. And by 3 years later, he has learned how to give people their memories back. And we'll get to that in a moment. So he has this one patient that comes in, and her name is Rwanda, and she wants to forget this memory, so he sets her down, and she's like, I'm sorry, I don't have any money, though. And he's like, just pay me when you can. So she says, okay. And they sit there and they talk, and the memory that she ends up... Sorry for all the yawning. I didn't yawn at all during the episode. Now I'm yawning like crazy. She sets up basically what had happened was she came home, and her dad or mom's boyfriend, I'm pretty sure it's her dad though, was beating her mom. Pretended to be out drunk, and then when she got close, he jumped up and grabbed her, and in the process of trying to snuggle struggle, she ends up hitting him over the head with a weapon and kills him. Now, they didn't show all of that. They only showed up to him trying to snuggle struggle. You find out the rest of it later at another time, and we'll get there. So the doc is looking at all this as it happens, and she leaves. But before she leaves, she gives him this robot bird that's able to parrot whatever's said around it. This comes into play here in a little bit. Um, his little helper, Rudy, played by Brendan Fletcher, one of my favorite lesser known actors. He he's basically his helper, right? And he's working on trying to fix the bird because the bird's just randomly saying a bunch of stuff. In the process, though, Dr. Brazil comes in and is like, hey, you're really good at what you do. Is there any way you could come help fix my computer? And the kid was like, yeah, I got you. So he goes back to help work on fixing on his computer. And this crazed guy comes in and is like, yeah, Dr. Newman sent me. I got things I need to forget. And he's like, well, we can't do anything tonight because we're working on getting the computer fixed. Come over in the morning. So this guy agrees, reluctantly, but also very psychotically reluctantly. Like, you could tell he's bad news. At this point, you can already guess where this is going, though. I'm just saying. So, Dr. Brazil, the next day, the girl comes back and she wants her memory back. Rwanda does. And as he's setting up to get her memory back, the crazy guy comes back in. Frank. I think it's Frank, right? Yeah. Frank comes back in. And he's like, yo, I really need you to do this. And the kid comes in and gets Dr. Brazil, and he's like, hey, the crazy guy's back. And Dr. Newman is like, all right, I can take care of him. Do you think you can read back her memory so that she can have it back? And that's the trick to getting someone's memory back, is he reads their memory back to them, which allows him to kind of take on the burden of it, which makes it easier for people to live with it, right? So the kid starts reading back her memory to her, and we go into the other area, and the super crazy dude is like really wanting to forget things, and the doc starts with him, and after their little session, he comes in and asks Rudy, how'd it go? And Rudy's just kind of staring off, like he's not handling it well. So Rudy and Dr. Newman end up talking, and while they're talking, the bird ends up repeating some of the stuff that the guy had said, and it was about breaking into somebody's house, hurting someone, and then robbing the place. He goes and visits Dr. Newman and asks who this guy was, and apparently he's a therapist that works there where they're at, and she's a little concerned about the fact that he's going there to have his memory wiped. So then Dr. Newman, while he's there, the crazy guy, the crazy guy, which is Frank, comes back and forces Rudy into helping him forget even more things. So while this is going on, Dr. Newman ends up looking through his personal computer to try and find out why he's going to have his memory wiped, and she starts seeing files of Dr. Brazil's wife. And Frank ends up showing up while she's looking through those files, and he's like, what are you doing in my office? And she's like, remember when you first started here and you came to me one night and was talking about there's somebody that you were absolutely in love with, but they don't want anything to do with you? And he goes, yeah. And she's like, and then the next day we all found out about Dr. Brazil's wife, Claire. He was like, yeah. She was like, did you have anything to do with it? And he's like, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know. She's like, were you at Dr. Brazil's? And he's like, I don't know. I don't remember. So she then goes on. They have a moment of arguing, and then she hugs him to comfort him, not in a loving way, but in a she's just trying to comfort him type way. And then we get back to Dr. Brazil's office, and Rudy's like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm not coming back. There's some people that need to forget the things, or that need to remember the bad things that they've done. And he doesn't believe that this is any longer ethical. So he leaves. During this conversation, Frank runs across Rwanda in public and is like, hey, I remember seeing you. I don't remember where. Do you remember where? And she's like, yes, Dr. Brazil's. And he's like, I need you to tell me how to get back to Dr. Brazil's. So the next scene, we see he shows up at Dr. Brazil's office, and he's like, hey, I need to remember what I did. And he's like, are you sure about that? And he's like, yes. So they sit down, and he starts reading the memories. And what basically ended up happening is not only... So if by now you should have already guessed that this guy killed Claire, which is, Dr. Brazil's wife. Not only did he forget all that and all the details leading up to it, he also chose to forget even going to this clinic, and he didn't know, and that's why he was back. He didn't know why he decided not to be there. So, in the process of learning about all of this, Rudy runs into Rwanda. Rwanda tells him that the guy came and is now at Dr. Brazil's, and he takes off. Runs. Makes it back to the office, pulls the glasses off of Dr. Brazil. And it's like, you don't have to take this burden. This is one burden you don't need. You didn't, you weren't the one that killed her. And in the process of that, Dr. Brazil takes the glasses off of Frank, inevitably causing to Frank what had happened to the original guy that got him fired in the first place, frying his brain or killing him. Don't know. Not really explained. At that point, he decides that he wants to forget all this. So Rudy hands him all the Rudy hands him all the stuff. He says, just one injection, write everything down, erase it, and we'll be done. And sometime later, however long it ends up being, Dr. Brazil walks out. Rudy's leaning up against a cart, and he hands him like this tablet, a pen, and these glasses. He's like, what are these? And Rudy's like, nah, just stuff that doesn't matter. And he tosses it on a table, and he's like, all right, let's go. And they leave. And that's the end of the episode. Now, I struggle with this episode as a whole because this is top-notch acting, first and foremost. Some of the best acting in the entire series so far. That's not based on the fact that I love the people that are in this already, right? Because I was honest with you with the Ice-T's acting. When Ice-T was in an earlier episode, his acting was not good. He's a much better actor now. You could definitely tell this was kind of the start of his acting career. Maybe not exactly the start, but within the start of his acting career. Everybody here killed it. The story overall isn't bad, just predictable. And unfortunately, what drags it down a little bit for me is I'm not a fan of him choosing to forget everything at the end. His friend, Dr. Newman, had been saying you need to learn to live with the problems and not just forget them. Like, that's what makes us human. And still in the end, he chooses to just forget them instead of living with them. So he doesn't learn from anything that's going on. And it doesn't make sense to me why they would go that route. Twist ending aside, you could tell he was going to do it. Just like you could tell old dude was going to end up being the killer of his wife. And at some point, if you didn't think that Rudy was going to run and stay away and decide to leave the clinic, then you haven't watched enough stories like this. So here's my problem. Is it decent? Yes. Is it worth watching? Yes. Is it the best episode? It's not even close. It's going to end up being middle of the pack for me, probably overall. We'll see where I place it once we get to the end of the season full-on ranking, which I think I'm going to do it a different way this coming up. But, all things aside, decent episode. Be sure to watch it if you haven't already. So that's going to do it for this review, guys. Thank you all for hanging out with me. We'll see you next time. Peace.